Yes, you are now listening to the sound of Sports Reports is Ordered. And of course, I am 2-5, the winner, the Aggie Daddy, beating on Falcons, guitar sounding like Parliament. And I think I might have with me, he might be here, the even kill, the world renowned. Born in Texas, raised in Virginia, representing everything New Jersey. And he wants you to know, for all you silk lovers out there, New Jersey is the largest source of manufactured silk in the United States. He is Mr. Logical. Do not bring feelings to a fact fight. Tonight, Mr. Logical has some issues with the Falcons. We got some college football playoff picks. Should Saquon play or should he sit? That and much more. Join us. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate. Do all the good things. Do all the free things. And let's get it. Who knew this was the Halloween edition of Sports Reports is Ordered?
This is the I'm a clown for having faith in the Falcons edition. BS. This is nonsense. This is what it feels like, Raheem. This is what you're making me do. I'm a 43-year-old grandfather, father of 4, decorated war veteran, and I'm dressed like a damn clown because I have faith in this team. I argue with this man live on the internet, on Soldier Boy's internet, yelling, arguing, saying like, yeah, there's no way Falcons gonna lose this game. And I'm watching the pass go, and it's like, okay, cool. 34 seconds. Where have we seen this before? How about fucking a month ago when a guy got fired for doing this wrong? How'd you not focus on the fact, like, yo, a guy I'm probably connected with somehow through these coaching circles got fired for not calling the timeout here? Nah, I'm gonna let the rookie just out there and then hang him out to dry in the post game talking about, I thought we could have got that action done quicker. The quickest action is putting both your damn hands together and making a T signal. I don't know how fucking difficult that is. Just figure it out. Figure it out or leave. I mean, like, if you get fired, your contract's guaranteed, so you're getting paid. I mean, Arthur Blank, sell a Home Depot and buy a real front office that can make some actual moves. So I'm going to pause this, regroup, and I'll be back in a second. Take that damn mask off, Mike.
I just want my movement like Larry Davis, y'all. But look.
The anger is real.
But look.
It's real. I emailed the organization last night.
He really did. You know what I'm saying? I told them to fire everybody.
Emailed them.
You know what I'm saying? He want the dogs gone and everything. You know what I'm saying? So, yo, I tried to tell Mr. Logical. This was about a month ago. I said that I don't care who the head coach is. I don't care who the quarterback is. I don't care who is on that roster to include Deion Sanders himself. I am not trusting the Falcons to win any game that they're supposed to win, or that they should win, or that they have a chance to win, or that they most importantly need to win. Because if Atlanta wins that game last night, the NFC South is in their hands.
Had the tiebreaker with Tampa Bay, and they had it for weeks. And that's the thing. That's when you're in a position of strength and power and leverage, you have to operate in that. They've handled this entire season as if they're scrambling. And it's like the decisions that they're making aren't their own. It's like you didn't have to pay Cousins if you figured that you were good with the potential fourth quarterback coming off the board. And that's because if you had discussions prior, like in the building, Terry Fontenot, Arthur Blank, Rich McKay, whoever, any Thomas Dimitrov, the old GM, if you guys had like a conversation, a mentorship conversation, if you knew that you were going to get Kirk Cousins or you were thinking highly of Michael Penix Jr., then don't draft Kirk Cousins. I'm gonna give you a couple of moves. I know hindsight's 2020, but it's a bit of revisionist history. But Jadarius Smith got traded this season, so he probably was unhappy. I called out Devontae Adams as being unhappy. He wasn't going to stay in with the Raiders long. Derrick Henry went for like $9 million. Saquon went for $39. And I get you just had Bijan Robinson. But if I know I'm going to get a rookie quarterback, I know I like the fourth guy. Like a lot of these teams are going to talk about the tanking situation. They may want the first or second guy and feel like the fourth guy is such a gap between 1 and 4. But if they went into the offseason and these workouts and these meetings and everything are like, yo, we think Penix is just as good as Williams, May, Daniels. What's that?
Oh, sorry. Kick was no good.
Okay. I was like, yeah. So I thought somebody was coming in. So if you feel like Penix was just as good as those guys, and then you should be like, we're good at 8 getting him. Let's see if we can scrape together $40 million to get Saquon. Now you got Saquon and Bijan Robinson. I'm pretty sure you can figure out a way to make that work because you have the younger version of Saquon. Like the expectation, the design of what you want to do. Granted, the skill is, he has to still prove it. But like what you want from Bijan, you get from Saquon. With running backs, you can do that with both. And if you're worried about, okay, this guy's older, well, I got a carbon copy of him, and I got him for a couple of years. And then by the time his contract is up, he'll be moving on. He'll be over 30. He'll be like, all right, cool. I did my 3 years, and now boom, you can pay Penix. Get his extension. But now you got a couple of good seasons. Maybe you have enough money to go get a guy like Jadeveon Clowney. I think he goes for like $12.5 million. He does like these mercenary 1-year deals. Yo, give him a 2-year, 21 million. You got 180 you gave the Kirk. You could divide that 180 up. You still could have got Judon. You still could have got Justin Simmons. You could have got Jadeveon Clowney. You could have got a real defensive tackle and still had the quarterback you liked. That's my problem. Is like, you could have had everything you needed and the quarterback you wanted and been successful this year.
Operating off of fear since that Super Bowl.
But the thing with the fear with Kirk and the backup quarterback, like I never bought that explanation. And like I told you, I'm like, yo, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, we want him to blah, blah. Then why take him 8th? Like, why take him 8th if you don't plan for him to play? It just doesn't make any sense to me. And watching it play out and watching how the season played out is like that's how poorly this organization is run. And it could be the fear. And I was talking in one of my group chats today, and actually it was associated with this. I was watching Shits and Gets podcast, a podcast I watch out of London, and the guy was talking about how you're put in these situations to learn and how learning is like a binary system. So if you sit down at a laptop and it's a multiple choice question, I know I'm going on a rant, but I'm really feeling it.
Right.
And you get A, B, C, and D, and you hit A, and A is the wrong answer, and it reloads the question. So now you select B, and B is the correct answer. The only way for you to know B was correct was like you had to attempt, okay, what's the question? I hit A. A is wrong. I know that that's wrong, but now I got to learn, and I hit B. Atlanta News, like, we understand you need to get the quarterback right, but you also have to see, do we have the other pieces in here to even move forward if we pay the quarterback 180? And you didn't, but they never make a move to say, you know what? Let's go all in on this thing. They never like learn. They just do the same poor thing other teams do. It's like, let's just hope that we can throw money, tons of money at this veteran, and it's going to turn us around. Like, that hasn't worked for that many teams recently.
So how does it feel?
$180 million quarterback.
So how does it feel that your fate is in the hands of Who Dat Nation.
Yo, I just watched them against Green Bay. They're the only team that's been shut out all year. And they looked like a team that was going to get shut out. Every team deals with injuries. They fired their coach. Like their entire organization on the field looks like a division lower college football caliber team playing against a division one team. Like, you have players. Yes, you have things. Facts, Josh. That's fact. Like, they better learn that and figure out a way to get out of this contract. Listen, this is not the move. Bringing in injury. They drafted a guy off an ACL. It's like, why not just get the defensive tackle that's healthy out of college? Now bring the guy rehabbing the ACL. It's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you? Okay, I digress.
You got me in tears too.
It's and the biggest problem, and I think a lot of fans probably feel this way. I get it at the draft, like the people who boo when they draft Josh Allen. It's like, okay, but if at least you look at Josh Allen, he's 6'5", he was like 225, 230 coming out of college. At least he looks like a big prototype, and you're going for it. You didn't get some guy in the offseason for $200 million and then draft Josh Allen. Now you're like, oh, you got to see if it works out. And I get it. Every draft pick doesn't hit. But your draft picks and your signees should go towards the success you're trying to go for, i.e. Philly paying Saquon $39 million. Everyone thought that was nuts. It was like, we think Swift is a good running back. We think having Saquon in there opens it up for A.J. Brown. So we're going to pay A.J., we're going to pay Devontae Smith, and we're going to get a top-tier running back in free agency. We locked up our quarterback already. Like, we're locking up the pieces we think we can plug in our philosophy, and it works. Other teams don't do that. And like I said, when we get to tanking, it's like, what is the goal of the organization and the team? And I don't think a lot of these teams that are failing as bad as they are, I don't know if that philosophy matches. I don't know if the coaching staff and the GM are on the same page.
I don't know. It might just be time, man. It's time to go. It's time to move it from Atlanta or something, because this is the stuff of curses. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter who's in the building. It doesn't matter who's on the team. This is what the Falcons do. Like, even when they had, I don't want to do it, but even when they had things in their hands, 28-3, it was just so Falcon to do what they did.
Yeah,
and guess who was on that staff? Guess who was on that staff?
Raheem Morris. And and I get it. I will contest to this all the way 100%. I am not out here saying people should get fired.
It's Terry Funk, though.
Yeah. Like, the people who are hired to do a job, other people have done the job and have made poor decisions, and they've made good ones. Other organizations have looked at how a rebuild is supposed to go. Some got lucky. Houston, we thought it was premature that they fired Lovie Smith, but in the same sense, I didn't think it was a good idea to hire a guy who probably needed 3-4 years for a rebuild anyway, because of his coaching style. He wasn't new, he wasn't fresh, and he's already older. Like, it's not an ageism thing. It's like, hey, I don't know how much longer a 60-plus-year-old guy is going to be motivated to work really, really hard at this job that he's had for damn near 40 years. It's like, I retired from the Air Force at almost 22 years. I was ready to walk at 20. Like, I was good May 20.
I was ready to walk at 13.
Yeah. I got to 17, and my dad was like, "You can get burned out around 16." He's like, "You'll get burned out around 17, 18." I'm like, "Nah, I'm loving it. I'm good." It's stressful, whatever. I'm like, I'm moving. But it got to a point where it was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to sit in this meeting and deal with this shit anymore. And it was like, all right, well, let's go ahead and get the universe, help me out and guided me to my exodus. So when I retired, I was like, okay. But I'm like, I still work as a government contractor. Like, I don't like I don't always like dealing with a lot of the stuff, but it's like to me, I look at it from a comical point of view because I'm retired now. I work there civilian, but I'm retired. But I'm like I don't know if I would have been able to deal with this up until this point. Like I originally thought. I originally thought I was going to do 26 years, so that would have still put me at another 18 months from now, and I've been retired for almost 3 years.
Right.
So when they had Lovie Smith, it was like, okay, I don't know how long this guy's going to grind, but you bring in D'Amico Ryans, you draft C.J. Stroud, you trade some capital, you get Will Anderson. Now you got defensive piece, offensive centerpiece. You match that and you mirror that with the coach's ideology. I think some more San Francisco guys came with him, or guys who were in the San Francisco organization. So he came from a good organization. He brought that to Houston. They had their turnaround season. They're going through some sophomore slumps now,
Still in the playoffs.
Still in the playoffs. They went out and got some pieces. Daniil Hunter. They went out and got Joe Mixon, Stephon Diggs towards ACL. But you can see last year when they got offensive stud, defensive stud, top 3 in the draft, like, boom, we're going to make this move. And then other people looked around like, Stephon was like, you know what? I think I could really rock down there with C.J. Stroud. Went down there. Daniil Hunter was like, yeah, I've been a staple in Minnesota's defense, but I'm taking these biceps down here to Houston. I mean, like, it's just, but I don't know a single player in the NFL that's going to be up for free agency next year that's like, yo, I think I can make something happen in Atlanta. Because they're not going to pay you. They're not going to pay you crazy.
Well,
the Jets might pay you crazy. Miami might pay you crazy. The Rams might pay you crazy. And you're like, you know what? I can really rock with the Rams when they send you that offer. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Atlanta has those kind of moves. And I don't know if they're going to be cash strapped because they still owe a guy. Well, he's going to be on the books probably for a mean cap hit. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming 45 to 50 million.
Yeah, and Diggs was balling. Shout out to him. My Maryland Terp. Holla back last time they beat Penn State and all that. But Mr. Logical, while you're on this topic and talking about these teams that just can't figure it out, why Jacksonville and the Giants out here winning football games?
It's tough because the game is Stingley Jr. Yeah, that was a good draft pick. They didn't bail on him. They didn't move on early. Atlanta, I don't think all these last like 10 years with Atlanta, I don't know how many defensive players that they drafted got to a second contract. Like the first round draft picks that they drafted that signed an extension with Atlanta, other than AJ Terrell. But I'm digressing. We'll get back on it. Tanking is tough because in football, it's too physical to half-ass it. It's too physical for a person who doesn't play, coach, GM, owner, player personnel guy, to tell a guy who's physically putting his body on the line, yo, take it easy. So it's just hard. It's hard to have a guy out there playing half speed because that's how you get hurt. That's why a lot of guys get hurt in the preseason because one guy's going 100 miles an hour and you're going 45 because you're like, I'm good. So you have to match that intensity. So there's going to be like Drew Lock can't just throw the ball out of bounds. Like he can't purposely throw the game. Like you can't function that way. I don't think you can function that way as a competitor. If you don't have the talent, then you put it out there and you see what happens. For instance, New Orleans. New Orleans they don't have their top 6 offensive weapons for the last few years. Taysom Hill, Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave
just came back, yeah.
Yeah, so like, and he's, so like they are out there like, hey, we are at a talent deficit against anybody we line up against. The Giants have just been losing games. Jacksonville just loses games. They made all the free agent moves. They got all the people who can make plays. So if those guys just play at your basic expectation, if you just play to that level with a good team that's just performing badly throughout the year, you're gonna fuck up and win some games.
So is it true that the Giants saw Colorado's game and won that game on purpose?
They said Drew Lock was like, yo, hold my beer.
Well, so like I look at
those cleats real?
I don't know. I look at tanking a little bit differently though. So like in the NBA, right? You have players that come through like LeBron James. You have dudes like Embiid that are just physical specimen. Like obviously he's been injured, but just looking at him coming out of college as a physical specimen, it was like I would love to have that person on my team. Everybody thought Andrew Wiggins was going to be the star, like this Vince
Air
Carter,
Canada.
Kobe Bryant kind of
I
guy.
was literally thinking that name when you said it. When you said
Yeah.
Embiid,
So
I was
so
thinking Wiggins. Yeah.
so in the NBA, tanking makes a little bit of sense. Plus, you have to be bad enough to get a lot of the lottery balls. So it doesn't guarantee you the number one draft pick per se, but it gives you a higher chance to get it. Whereas in the NFL is such a need-based draft in a lot of ways that I don't know how beneficial tanking really is. Because, like, for instance, right, looking at this draft order that's on the screen right now, New England's not drafting Shador. They're not drafting Cam Ward. Tennessee, maybe, because we've heard that Will Levis may be on his way out the door. Cleveland, they just restructured Deshaun Watson's contract. But does that mean they're going to find they're going to have the ability to release him and deal with the cap hit that would entail?
They're going to look at what Atlanta does. Atlanta did this. Atlanta had the big money starter, drafted QB. We are seeing now that it's not working out.
Right.
Like, no matter how much they're saying it is working out, once the money lays out, we're going to see. So maybe Cleveland looks at it and like, this is their learning scenario. Do we hit A again, or do we hit B, the correct answer, and do the correct thing, or do we try to copy something that didn't work?
Yeah, so if you're the Giants at 4, I think you're still in a good spot to get who you think you need to get. Because when I look at the, got to do it, Mr. Logical. Got to look at the schedule. So you got New England playing Buffalo this weekend. Buffalo's locked into the 2. I don't think we're going to see Josh Allen. You got Cleveland going to Baltimore. Baltimore wants revenge because you remember they beat Baltimore in Jameis's first game. And Baltimore can win the division with a win. So Cleveland's going to get the best of Baltimore. The Eagles are already locked in. So outside of Saquon trying for the record, the Giants may not face a lot of resistance from the Eagles. So that's where you get into this. Tennessee playing Houston, who's locked into their spot. So Cleveland might actually be the beneficiary here that's playing a team with something to play for, which will enable them to move up potentially to number 1.
Yeah, and they also will be in a position to call Las Vegas like, yo, how many first-round picks you want to give us for this spot?
Right. So the reason that there's the pick for Brock Purdy. So the reason that I think tanking doesn't necessarily work that way in the NFL is because the NFL is such a cutthroat league that a lot of these players are either A, trying to audition for another team, or they want to keep the job they have.
Yeah.
So you don't got time to be out here. Now, the organization may want to tank. The owner may want to tank. The GM may look at this and say, oh, if I can get my hands on that Shador, but that third string corner don't give a fuck about Shador.
Listen, we saw Doug Peterson in that game pull Jalen Hurts and put what's the boy name that?
The guy from Indiana. I can't even think of his name right now. Sudfield, Nate Sudfield.
Sudfield, yeah. And then he had the audacity to say, that guy's been working hard all year. He deserves an opportunity to play. Like, now, they were at 7 if they lost, and they would have been at like 10 or 11 if they won.
And you put your division foe into the playoff with that.
Yeah, and it kept Dallas out of the playoffs. But I remember like seeing that, and it was like, that's why you can't take an NFL, because it's obvious, and it's too many people that are gonna have to move. Like, you're normally a stat guy, but this is a stat I mentioned before. The NFL turnover rate is 25%. So your active roster is 53 guys. So basically, you can essentially count on 15 of those guys being gone. 15 of those guys being gone. So if you're a guy like, let me see, give me like Kayvon Thibodeau. He might be up for a contract extension. or somebody might be willing to trade for him and give him a big extension.
And these dudes got incentives.
So you got guys got incentives. Like last night, Zach Ertz, he made like $750,000 in incentives last night by playing that game. Antonio Brown got a couple of passes from Tom Brady back in the day, so he can hit his incentives. So you got guys playing for that. So you can't have guys out there thinking like, I'm just gonna just lay this game down, because 15 of us aren't gonna be here next year. I could be one of those 15. So I got to put on tape. Hey, this guy plays to the very end. Like all the stuff they tell you to do, but yet teams will deliberately ask their players to tank. But they say, hey, you got to play every possession to the whistle. I don't want you taking breaks. I don't want you slacking. I need effort until it's draft lineup time, and you're Lovie Smith and you go for 2 for the win and they fire you. So it's like this catch-22, and I understand it. It probably matters if, like I said, if you're a bad team, or if you're an NFL team. I don't think any NFL teams are bad teams. You're just at a talent. You're just at a talent deficit. Like I said, if you look at, like I said, we line up all defensive linemen, offensive linemen, wide receivers. You put them on all these combines. You put it's pretty much the same. It's a few teams that have guys that run 4.2s. They have a few guys that have 45-inch verticals. For the most part, your talent base is about even.
So the problem though,
there. So long as you are one of those teams, if you get decimated by injuries, then you're going to fall to these spots. In that case, then you can put guys out there that you may be auditioning for another team. You may be auditioning for, you see, like, yo, is this backup quarterback going to be my guy going forward? Like Mac Jones.
That's the thing, right?
Like, back next year?
But that's the thing, right? You play Saquon for a half. He breaks the record. You take Saquon out. The Giants taking out their players too? Like you're going to try to, Philly's like, hey, this game don't matter. We're locked into our spot. Giants say, hey, we want that draft pick. We pulling all our players too. And then you just have a mid-off?
I would assume that Roger Goodell and the owners have had this conversation simply because it's still a product at the end of the day. It's still an entertainment product. It's a game. We love it, but it's still an entertainment product. Right. And he's like, yo, you can't go out there and bring up your whole practice squad and redo it. Jacksonville played poorly, but they have good players. They had a rookie go over 1,100 yards. Now that's with, choppy quarterback play. So you can tell that's a good wide receiver. 1,100 to almost 1,200 yards as a rookie.
They discovered Tank Bigsby.
It just sometimes you have a bad scheme. The voice in the headset needs to be changed. Maybe the GM should have made a couple of different moves. Maybe guys like something, for instance, like the GM might have been courting a guy, and he felt like the GM disrespected him. So now he's like, yeah, I don't want to come to Jacksonville. I don't want to stay here. So guys like, you know what? My hamstring tight. It could be a lot of different things that contribute to a team not being successful in the middle of the season. But when you get down to this point, guys are playing for their next team. So you're going to have to either flat out tell your coach, listen, do not win this game. Put the kicker on IR and bring in another guy up the street, and hopefully he can handle pressure moments. Maybe he misses a couple. But I think it's just too much effort to deliberately set it up to where we're going to lose this game, other than we're going to put out guys like we're going to play Tommy DeVito. Because if Drew Luck started off with like 7 for 9, like 2 touchdowns or something like that, if they would have pulled him and then put in DeVito, then I'm like, okay, yeah, you guys are deliberately throwing games at this point.
So with that being said, what's the headline on Monday if Saquon goes for that record and tears his Achilles?
I think it'll be like a Venn diagram. I think people who feel this way, people feel that way, and people who kind of understand.
So if you're Sirianni, is he going for the record this week?
I think, like I said, Sirianni I think he operates on this us against the world. And for Saquon, publicly. We saw, like, so we've seen all the clips. We've seen how they gave Daniel Jones 160 million while you were begging for 20, and they just passed you over 2 years in a row, and then they let you just walk. So I think Sirianni is going to give him the opportunity. Like, hey, do you want to go out here and stick it to these guys, or do you want to just stand on the sideline in sweatpants and let these other guys cook? I personally think Saquon's already won that divorce. And I feel like the people he has in his circle are level-headed people. I think he has like successful uncles and like mentors from college and mentor head coaches from like his youth. I think the people he talks football with, I don't believe they are people like Sirianni who are like just kind of braggadocious and like, yo, you should stick it to him, because he already did. The play against Jacksonville, when he ass forward hurdled a guy after a spin move, that's when the Giants lost to Saquon. The thing is like, yo, you let a guy walk, didn't trade him. You let a guy walk. And the next team he went to, he has probably one of the most incredible plays we've seen on an NFL field in years.
Right.
Yeah, it's your fault. And then he doubled. Then he came back and hit you with the 300 yards against the Rams. It was like, yeah. So he's already won the divorce. I think it's probably a bigger move to not play. Just be like, yo, you guys are so beneath me that I'm not even going to try for this record, because I don't even want to waste my time dealing with y'all.
Nah, see, you got to go for it. You're too close. Right now, you're the eighth. This is the eighth best all-time single-season rushing yardage in a season. You're only 101 yards away. So if I'm Sirianni,
what do we think of Eric Dickerson, legacy-wise?
I'm gonna get there. Hold on, I'm gonna get there. Okay. So if I'm Sirianni, you got a half. You know what I'm saying? A half or 25 carries, whatever comes first. You know what I mean? If you can't get it within 25 carries, it ain't meant to be. Now, if we get to halftime and say you're 5 to 8 yards away, you can get this record. If we're at halftime and I gave you 20 or 20 plus carries and you're still 30 yards away, shutting you down. You know what I'm saying? The juice ain't worth the squeeze. Now, as far as Eric Dickerson goes, go ahead.
30, it's looking like 30-something degrees this weekend in this area. Like, I'm about 30
you gotta run.
Philly. So you're going to run.
49ers score right back.
But with that being said, to you're almost, I give you a half, so forth and so on.
Oh, they're calling them down.
If I'm not going to play you the whole game because I think there's a potential for you to get hurt, then I'm not going to risk you at all in the game at all. If he didn't hit 2,000 yards, I would be like, okay, you're this close to 2,000 yards, your personal best. Because ultimately, like, I'm gonna say my Eric Dickerson thing, and then you can say your piece. I don't. Hopefully, I don't step on your toes. But it's like, I don't think people look at Eric Dickerson's record as like this ultimate accomplishment. You know what I mean? Like, I get it, but it's not like, it's not the way people look at Jordan 6 for 6 in Finals MVPs. So it's not. You're not taking down a record that people have been clamoring for. Like, oh my God, I cannot believe no one's broke this record. Because Adrian Peterson was broken. That was silly because they were playing for a playoff spot. And then they took him out like 9 yards short. Yeah. That just shows a lack of connection with, but he needed to play that game because they were playing for a playoff spot. That was different. I think going for the record, you're breaking a record that you don't need to have on your legacy. No one's going to be like, yo, Saquon had the most rushing yards in one season. It's going to be like, yo, remember when the Giants let Saquon walk and he ran for 2,000 yards the next year? I think that is just as valuable as the record. So, because like no one's looking for no one's looking at that record like, oh my God, I cannot believe no one's broken this record yet. See what I mean?
So I see your point. But I also think that how many opportunities do you get at a record like this? Like Adrian Peterson, right? How many chances did he get to bite the apple? You know what I mean? Like Barry Sanders, how many bites of that apple did he get? So when you're in range, I think you just got to do it. You know what I mean? That's first and foremost. Second of all, when I look at Eric Dickerson, when he retired, he was the third all-time leading rusher. And even to this day, with all the people that have come in the league since he retired, he's still number 9 all time. You know what I mean? So I think his legacy is perfectly fine and intact. Saquon, he's going to knock Saquon because Saquon did it. If he does it, he would have took an extra game to do it. Now, I think what makes...
And I'll say that's another piece. That's another piece. You say the records matter, but true indeed, OJ, when he cracked 2,000 yards, it was like 12 games.
Oh, you're gonna steal my shit now, huh? It was 14. It was 14. 14. But yeah. You know what I mean? But the point being is that him and Eric Dickerson, OJ and Eric Dickerson didn't have a bye week when they did it, first of all. So it was a less game for Eric Dickerson than Saquon and no bye week. You know what I'm saying? But OJ did it in 2 less games. It took Eric Dickerson 2 more games. So you just getting into the weeds.
Like
you getting into the weeds.
When you come into
the record is a record.
What is Barry Bonds' home run record? 73 in 1 year or something like that?
Like do you think? Yeah, 73. Yeah.
Okay. So when the season starts, that MLB record is the one that people look for. Maybe Nolan Ryan has the most strikeouts in the season. But if a pitcher has pitched, say they capped him out at, I'm just going to throw a generic number out there, 100 innings. Like, say that's the cap for this pitcher, and he is 6 strikeouts short of breaking Nolan Ryan's record. Like, I'm just making.
You got to make an exception.
It's like we don't even no one thinks about that record. So you're risking it just to have your name there. And no one talks about it. People
all right, now listen to this, though.
Record.
But listen to this. Over the last 2 years, we've been talking about how, and the media in general, everybody's been talking about how the NFL is devaluing the running back. And how these running backs, they were trying to lowball these running backs and all that kind of thing like that. That's another reason why this matters. You know what I mean?
I think Derrick Henry, Saquon, Josh Jacobs have already proved there's tiers to the running back, and tier 1 and tier 3 is
if your son had the chance to break the high school record, you would tell him, yo, just sit down. If he could break the I don't know, passing touchdown record or rushing touchdown record for your district's height, whatever, you would tell him, hey, you know what? Y'all already in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like, y'all are up. What? Just come out, bro. You don't need that record.
I'll be honest. I'll say this. I'll say no, because at that level, he might not get another opportunity for a great whatever. Because there's so many high school football players. This might be your water cooler conversation.
All right, now think about this.
Saquon is already at the top of at the pinnacle of the sport that he plays, and he's done 2,000 yards. He's essentially got every person in the GM front office fired. They are fired.
But you're 101 yards away. Like if he was 200 yards away and you were trying to force feed him to get it, I understand that. But Saquon could run off a 40-yard run. You know what I mean?
But for me, this game is force feeding.
And plus to do it against the Giants too.
But to me, like I said, I think it hurts more that you outgained. I think honestly, the quarterbacks with the Giants probably don't have 2,000 yards passing. I mean, I'm pretty sure they do, but it's like you've already shown them how inadequate they are.
And it's a 40-year-old record.
But that's the thing. No one goes into week 1. There's think about the conversation.
No, team success is the ultimate goal.
Like, can a wide receiver crack 2,000 yards? Right.
Team success is the ultimate goal.
Who has the receiving record for yards?
Megatron.
No one says who's going to break Megatron's record.
Oh, Tyreek Hill does every year. Like just last year, Tyreek Hill.
He never said that in Kansas City. He said it in Miami.
And Cooper Kupp.
But they didn't know. Like, that's what I'm saying. But the conversation is, can a wide receiver go for 2,000? It's not, can someone break Megatron's record? See what I'm saying? So, like, the conversation starting the season isn't, can someone break Eric Dickerson's record? So, like, every year that it's, when someone gets close, then the conversation starts. But I don't think that's at the forefront of the conversation.
No, not at all. No, team success is the ultimate goal. But
I don't think that
if you have the opportunity to do something that hasn't been,
have more value.
Just like Ashton Genty, right? Just like Ashton Genty. Let's say Boise didn't make the playoff. You know what I mean? And he could break the record in a bowl game. I would still play.
But once again, that is a different, because this is the end of your college football career. Like, this is your legacy stamp wrapped up. Like, this is you putting a bow, which, like I said, it could be the last time you shine in high school. Like I said, if my son was able, like, this could be the last time he gets an opportunity.
Saquon could have a career-ending injury next year.
But he's already etched his
I
name.
know, but I'm just saying, if the record is there, why not just take it?
I don't know if 102 yards this weekend is going to change your opinion on Saquon's legacy.
No, it probably won't at all. But that don't matter at the same time. If you're an athlete, you play to be the best, right?
He is. He's clearly the best. Him running, he's not running against Eric.
Right. But if I go get this 101 yards, no one has done what I've done.
He might. I think he already might have the all-time scrimmage yards record.
That's cool. Nobody cares about that.
No one cares about that.
Nobody cares about that. We talking about running backs.
Got it. But that's what I'm saying. Running back. Like, as far as the running backs, I think the running backs get that. A lot of guys who run the ball and catch it. But I mean, you could pull it up. We could do the split screen again. But like I said, I just think that certain records, albeit they are incredibly difficult to break. Like, we're
okay, what about a quarterback? What about a quarterback? If you were in range of the single season touchdown record, would that not matter enough? And if you answer yes, and hold up, if you answer yes, you're showing the problem with the league, because we hold quarterbacks to this esteem that we don't hold the other positions to.
I just honestly, I don't.
I mean, any record. If it was the single season sack record, if it was the interception record, I don't know.
I think the single season sack record is different because sacks are so difficult to get. So many things have to go your way to get the sack. So I think that the effort involved to get.
How many people have run for 2,000 yards in NFL history? Like 9
or 10. I'm not saying it's not a difficult thing to do. But how many guys have had over 20 sacks in a season? Not that many.
Right.
No one's had 23, but we have multiple guys, different types of guys, like Jamal Lewis, Chris Johnson, Barry,
Adrian Peterson,
OJ, Adrian Peterson, some surprise guy, I think that went for 2. I think Jamal Lewis was a surprise.
Yeah, Jamal Lewis did it. Yeah.
The surprise guy that went for 2,000. So it's like a wide variety of players that went for 2,000. I don't think Emmett's ever gone for 2,000. I don't think anyone's done it twice. So I get that it's elite company. Right. I just don't know if it's worth going out there, especially considering the position you play. Going out there with you, let's keep it 100, like injury history, or how freakish an injury, like you're literally running to a pile of people. It could be 8 people around you when you're getting tackled that weigh 275 pounds or more.
No, I'm going for it, and if you don't get it, you don't get it. But you ain't gonna. If you were my player, I ain't going to let you not get it just because I feel like you shouldn't or whatever. Like, you know
In
what
the
I mean?
game,
Like,
the games in the Meadowlands.
yeah, I believe so. Let me double check that.
Yeah, I would. Like I said, I personally think because I'm a different kind of petty.
Oh no, it's
I'm
at Philly, and you can do it in front of your home crowd too.
I get the allure. I get the allure. But if I'm Saquon, I'm like, listen, man, I'm good. I want to be ready for the playoffs. I get that personal goals are there and records and all. I just personally think that what he's done this year, what he has shown this year, what he has done for running backs this year has, I think he's changed the market going forward. I think that's more impactful than the Eric Dickerson record. I think he's already changed to where if a if you got a guy like think about Hubbard for Carolina, they locked him up in the middle of the season. I think people are starting to see the value in having a running back that fits your system, not just a running back that came from college that you
Right.
can sign. I think people understand the value of it. Ask Daniel Jones. Tracy fumbles in Carolina and they lose that game, and Daniel Jones is gone. See what I'm saying? So, like, he holds on to that ball and they break for a touchdown. Daniel Jones is still there. So, he still has a job if they can maintain the ground game and win that game. Because Daniel Jones was throwing that ball all over the place. He was giving the ball up in the red zone and everything else. But if the running back holds on to the ball, carries, scores a touchdown, you don't lose the quarterback.
Yeah. But I just think, like I said, like you said, nobody comes into the season, maybe you say it internally, but you probably don't voice, I'm going for the rushing record or whatever record this year. You know what I mean? But I think that when you get within range, a certain range, you just owe it to yourself to see it through. And like I said, I'm not saying that he should play the whole game. Even, it doesn't matter for seeding purposes or anything like that. But hey, I'm gonna give you 20 to 25 carries or the first half, whichever comes first. If you don't break it with that, it just wasn't meant to be. But I'm not gonna hold you back from history.
Oh, I don't think, like I said, I think Sirianni's gonna say, hey, like Sirianni is that whole waving across the
Sirianni might
field.
play him the whole game and be like, "Yo, get 2,200."
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think Saquon's temperament. I think like I said, I go back to that mic'd up clip when he said, "Let the other guys eat." I think if he really thinks about it, he's like, the Giants are in shambles, and it's because I came here and did this.
Right.
I think that's. I mean, like, it's like watching your ex just fall apart. They're watching their life fall apart. You don't wish it on them, but like, hey,
you might smile a little.
When you're with me, eating steak and
smile a
lobster on a
little
Wednesday was an option.
You might smile a little when you
now
learn
you out
that
here
you only
eating
wanted to
the
cut.
biggie bag from Wendy's for dinner on your date nights because I mean, you slid and you dealt with this bum, and now it didn't work out, and that bum gone. Now you by yourself. And that's what the Giants are. The Giants are sitting at home, no Daniel Jones. They out $160 million, eating a $6 biggie bag from Wendy's when they could be at, Smith or Walensky with the tomahawk with the potatoes underneath and the flamethrower melting the butter. Like, that's a different kind of lifestyle. The Giants know nothing about that because how they did Saquon.
Because you don't know nothing about that. So we made it to the last week of the regular season. There are only 2 playoff spots open, but there's a whole lot of seeding ranges that we could end up with. So let's take it from the top, Mr. Logical. So your Kansas City Chiefs, I know you're a Mahomes guy. They've clinched the number 1 seed. Luckily for the Buffalo Bills, they will avoid Kansas City at least until the AFC Championship game.
The Arrowhead Invitational, according to Nick Wright.
Yeah, they're locked into 2. You got Houston locked into the 4, but the 3 is up for grabs. So what we have on Saturday, we have the Steelers hosting the Bengals. We have the Ravens hosting the Browns. If both teams win, The Ravens are the 3. If the Ravens win, period, I guess, they're the 3. If Pittsburgh wins, but Baltimore somehow loses to Cleveland, Pittsburgh's the 3. Value to the 3, you get to host the Chargers at home. Being the 5 ain't so bad because, as you can see, you would go to Houston. Now, if you're Pittsburgh and you lose, but then say the Chargers win on Sunday, you go to Baltimore. So, bit of a difference there. So, so the Chargers can only be 5 or 6. So there's that. So keeping it going, of course, we got this mess down here at the bottom. If Cincinnati beats Pittsburgh Saturday, they are not in just yet. They still need Denver to lose, and they need Miami to lose or tie. So even though they have the head-to-head over Denver, Denver still is up a game in the loss column. If Denver loses and Miami wins, Miami's in. So for Cincinnati to get in, they need Denver and Miami to falter. So Miami is up in the Meadowlands, as Chris was saying earlier, against the Jets. The Jetropolitans have the chance to help out Joe Burrow. If not, Carson Wentz has a chance to help out Joe Burrow because I imagine that it's going to be him against the Broncos this weekend. And I'm not so sure.
Carson Wentz has the faith of 4 teams in his hands.
Yeah, and I'm not so sure that if Carson Wentz starts, that automatically means that the Broncos are going to win. I'm not sure.
He's going to be trying. He's going to be one of those guys out there really, really trying to win. Like that whole tanking. That's why the tanking works. He can't go out there and half-ass it. The tickets are $600. It's cold as hell. It's like you can't just be out here I'm just gonna laissez-faire because you're auditioning and you want to perform. Like you want to do well for yourself. Not even for like wins and losses. Like I'm out here. I prepped all week. I did all the study. I'm getting a starting opportunity. I want to complete these passes. I want to move the ball. I want to get first downs. I want to get touchdowns. So it's like, even though they're locked up the number 1 seed, he's not like, okay, we're locked in the number 1 seed. I'm going to go back to the bench. So let me just hand this ball off 48 times and then punt. He's going to be out there trying to make plays.
Yeah, and you got Andy Reid too. So over in the NFC, Philadelphia has clinched the 2 seed. Detroit and Minnesota was flexed into Sunday night. The winner of that game wins the division and gets the 1 seed. Okay, so who's going to play the Eagles at that number 2 seed? Well, we got more football to play. As of today, it would be the same team that they opened up the season with in Brazil. It'll be those Green Bay Packers down here at 11-5 because Washington is ahead of them even though they have the same record. So if the playoff was today, it would be Washington at Los Angeles, Green Bay at Philadelphia. Now, Washington has already lost to Dallas this year, so I'm not taking anything for granted. So if Washington loses and Green Bay wins, you flip that. Green Bay goes to LA, and then you get Philly, Washington Part 3. From there, the Rams clinched the NFC West based off the Commanders beating the Falcons last night, which knocked out Seattle. So Seattle's done. So the
all right, that's all, folks. I'm out.
So the NFC is all spoken for except for the NFC South. So if Atlanta wins and the New Orleans Saints somehow muster up the gumption to beat Tampa Bay, then the Falcons are back in the mix. If Tampa Bay wins, Tampa's in. But it's not that simple just yet because if the Rams lose to Seattle, then they swap. Tampa would be the 3, Rams would be the 4. So then you would have the Rams, in that scenario, you would have the Rams hosting the loser of the NFC North title game, if you will. And then you would have Tampa Bay hosting either Washington or Green Bay. So in a nutshell, That's your playoff picture heading into week 18. So, Mr. Logical, with all of that being said, what do you do if you're Pittsburgh? So, Baltimore plays before you.
You need a win. You got to get a win. No matter what the scenario is, they've had this skid. It's probably been some clamorings in the locker room. I hate to cut you off, but you got to get a win.
No, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
like, should they play or should they be like?
Justin Fields was probably still well liked in the locker room, and we know Russ is kind of quirky. You need a win. You need to make sure you win this game so you go into the playoffs with the win. You were leading the division at 10-3. You can't lose 4 straight and like backdoor your way into the playoffs.
And end up going to Baltimore.
I mean, you got to play a tough team no matter what.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, I'd rather if I got to win to play Houston, I'll take that over losing and going to Baltimore. I'll put it like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, you got to get an opportunity, and like I said, Mike Tomlin has been coaching so long. The coach of the year votes probably aren't going to go to him. He's probably going to get a few. Depends on the region.
So which team gets the 8 seed? Oh, I'm sorry, the 7 seed. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the NBA. Denver, Cincinnati, and Miami.
Denver, because I know Kansas City is, they have the rivalry. I don't know how deep it is. I mean, we got the Christian Okoye, Steve Atwater hit. I remember, so I don't know if it's like it really runs that deep. It's very similar. It's like the Atlanta-New Orleans rivalry. It's like they never really knocked each other out of anything like I really think of. Like, I feel like it's just because they're in the same division, they just call it a rivalry just because. But I don't know if Andy Reid's going to pull out all the tricks to try to beat Denver. And Denver's going to float out the best, one of the top defenses in the league. I'm not sure if Carson Wentz is going to be able to just build enough of a rapport with the guys who are going to play. I don't know how many of your wide receivers are going to start. Like, are you going to play Hollywood Brown and Worthy? Are you playing Kelsey? Because we know Carson Wentz loves chopping it down to the tight end. So you have 2 or 3 tight ends in Kansas City, but are you going to play number 87?
I'm not sure that Cincinnati wins at Pittsburgh, first of all. So it may just be a Denver-Miami conversation.
I know Joe Burrow's going to go for 250 and 3 touchdowns. So if Pittsburgh can't get the 24 point or 22 points, then that's going to be a problem because Joe Burrow, 8 games in a row, I believe, 50 and 3 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So he's getting that. T. Higgins is playing like he's trying to get a
contract. You remember what the score was last time they played a couple weeks ago?
What's like 44-38 or 47?
Yep. 44-38. So I don't know if the Steelers can put up 44 this time, but I don't know.
Like I said, but they've lost 3 in a row.
But
so
I don't know if
the
Bengals can
stop air it out.
From getting 44.
I don't know if they're gonna be able to air it out. Is Pickens worth playing this week? Because I know he's been out for a few weeks.
I think you got to.
Is he worth playing this week to try to win to get the Houston?
That's part of the reason that you were losing your games.
Or do you say, you know what, let's give him another week to heal and recognize, like, hey, he is the reason that we couldn't, like his injury was the reason we couldn't move the ball. So why bring him back too soon? If he needs another week, if he needs 2 more additional days,
this game, we go into Baltimore. That's why
I'd rather have him healthy in Baltimore. Yes, dealing with Lamar is dealing with Lamar. But for years, under the Tomlin regime, they've done a pretty good job with Lamar.
Mm-hmm.
Even in his pretty much his 3rd MVP type season.
Yeah, they also haven't won a playoff game since 2016. So, like, if I could get Houston, give me Houston.
Oh, of course, if you can. But if, like I said, if a guy, I know guys want to die.
I'm sure they would love to knock the Bengals out, right? They would love to. They would.
And I think they probably feel like they can.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch the Denver tape, maybe like, you know what, we can do some of these things that Denver was doing. We can do these things that they did to take Chase out of the game, but they just had to make sure T. Higgins also isn't matched up one-on-one with the rookie corner. And it was offensive pass interference on that touchdown in the corner too. Like he just made it look like it was his motion to catch the ball. but he pushed him in both shoulders when he's putting his hands up, like he just was like, ugh. You see a fluid motion because Riley Moss, like stopped and looked at the ref, like, yo, you didn't see that? Like,
Yeah.
nah, man, yeah, touchdown, toe tap. But yeah, like I said, I love these division games. Week 18 was something on the line. Then you have guys, like I said, a lot of guys when they leave teams, they like to go to a team in division so they can get 2 more shots at the team that didn't want them. Guys got to put a chip on their shoulder. And you keep your division opponent out. I'm pretty sure Kansas City will love to beat Denver, but I don't know how much they're willing to risk offensively to make that happen.
So you remember what I told you the other day
about
Jamar Chase?
Did you get the numbers right?
No, but they were worse than what I said. I said 6 for 78. He ended up with 9 for 102, but when defended by Surtain, he went 3 for 27.
So if they just would have followed him all game.
Coaches, right? Like, coaches. I mean, I'm just I don't know what to tell you.
I watched football as a fan in my house, and I've watched it from the sideline with my sons and the youth league and the high school game. And I watch and I think I get it. It's easy for me to say this as I'm standing on the sideline, my sweatpants, my Jordan, and my Falcons hat, watching a football game happen. But in the same sense, is like there's coaches like in a booth, like in the same vantage point. So it's like you still got to be seeing some of the stuff that I'm seeing that you guys aren't doing.
Right.
And it's like, so if a defensive coordinator is like, yo, Sean, let me do this because right now we got Jamar Chase locked, or you let me put Surtain on Higgins and we double Chase. Like, how Bill Belichick did it for all those years. Can we try that out? Because this one-on-one that we got with Riley on the other side with T. Higgins is killing us. Let me do something. Like, now I'm gonna stay with this. And I was like, all right, cool.
So
30-24.
So another record. Is Ashton Jeanty going to get the 132 yards that he needs against Penn State tomorrow night to pass Barry Sanders for the all-time rushing record?
No.
Or single season, I should say.
No, because I think Boise State's a good football team, and I know they took Oregon to down the wire, and they had a couple of unfavorable calls. But if I'm looking at it, I think the athletes that Penn State puts on the field, they shut down the passing game, and a one-dimensional running team is tough in college football to beat, especially when you're just kind of out athleted,
right,
between Penn State and Boise State.
Yeah, I was thinking something around 75 yards, but the scene of the crime is the Fiesta Bowl, where both Boise State and Penn State have never lost as a participant of the Fiesta Bowl. Boise State, of course, came into our memories and our lives with the Fiesta Bowl victory against Oklahoma. Ian Johnson proposing to his girl at the end of the game.
What is Jared Dombrowski, the quarterback?
Yep. And this time it's going to be Maddox Matson. But also for Penn State, right? Remember I said, hey, Penn State and Notre Dame are the Cowboys and 49ers. Cowboys and 49ers last Super Bowls, 94 and 95. Penn State and Notre Dame last titles, 87 and 88. Now, with that being said, the Fiesta Bowl was where Penn State won their last national title back in 1987 against the Miami Hurricanes.
Convicts versus Catholics.
Now.
Well, that was Notre Dame one.
So Penn State, just for the record, is 5th against the rush. They only allow 58 yards per game, but even more impressively, 1.6 yards per carry. Ridiculousness.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's nuts.
Yes. Abdul Carter is going to wreak havoc. The difference in this game, I think, though, that people aren't considering is that Boise has a pretty damn good defensive line, too. The problem is they can be had in the air. So can Drew Aller and Tyler Warren, my Heisman guy, can they rip Boise apart? Because I don't know if Penn State's wide receivers can do it. Harrison Wallace has been coming on the last couple of weeks, but still not a guarantee type thing.
Yeah, and I don't know how many long drives Boise State can have offensively that's going to keep their defense off the field.
Right, exactly.
So, if Tyler Warren does get loose or one of these wide receivers gets loose, because, college football, we see big plays happen all the
It
time.
could get ugly.
It could get ugly because it's
Penn
like,
State favored
we
by
know
11
first
and a half,
down,
by
you
the
give
way.
it to Genty. We know on first down, no matter what the result was, how you got the ball back. If Penn State gets a touchdown, your first down play is a handoff to Genty. And if that gets stuffed and you're a 2nd and 11, if you're a 2nd and 9 and 2nd and 11, too many drives, those don't normally turn into first downs. And then you're punting it back to a team that's like I said, they're a bigger, better team.
Yeah, they still got Nick Singleton. They still got Katron Allen in the backfield. Penn State's favored by 11 and a half. Your over-under is 53. So, but when I look back at the SMU game last week that, upset Kirk Herbstreit, Lane Kiffin, Paul Feinbaum, and everybody else.
Yeah, no one's upset with the Tennessee game, though.
Yeah, SMU shot themselves in the foot. They had 2 turnovers in the red zone. They had a pick 6, so that was a lot of self-inflicted wounds at the wrong times, plays that just happened at an inopportune time.
And their quarterback's a playmaker too. Like the Boise State quarterback isn't.
He's the traditional.
He's a traditional statue.
Yeah,
I'm good. We're gonna run this pro style offense. Get the ball to the running back, block. Big tough Idaho farm kids out here playing tight end and left tackle.
Right. So I mentioned I mentioned Boise's defensive line. 2nd in the nation in sacks, by the way. The only problem is the only team they played with a pulse was Oregon. So I don't know what to do with it. So, for lack of trying to look at the Oregon game as an example of what Boise State can do.
They could have been a big fish in a small pond kind of.
Right. And that game against Oregon that they're in the playoff for because they lost by 3 points, Mr. Logical, that game was on September 7th. So it's been a real long time since Boise has went up against anything like this. So I'm going to take Penn State. I'm going to take Penn State to cover. And I'm going to call it something like 38-17.
I was thinking like 34-17.
Yeah, it's going to be something like that. I think they're just going to be too massive on the lines, and I think Boise's just going to get pounded, so to speak, pause and all that. But
it goes back to our Saquon conversation about the record. He could potentially break this record, and we won't look at it the way we look at Barry Sanders breaking the record.
Yeah, because he did it in 11 games.
Did it in 11 games. He did it.
Had a couple of 300-yard games.
300-yard games. It was like, that's what it looks like when you have one of those kind of seasons.
Right.
Saquon, like I said, Saquon's had a record-breaking looking season. Like I've never seen a running back go for 65-yard plus touchdowns in an NFL game. Like break 65, 70-yard runs twice. Like I told you, I blinked. Like I had my head, like I had it on mute. I got my drink from the kitchen, sat down, had my phone, I looked up, talking to Rach, I look at the TV, and they got 7 more points. I'm like, it's 14-40 left in the third quarter. I'm like, how'd they get 7 points? And then I saw the play. But that was the second time he did that. Genty has had a great season. And I know people say, oh, you got robbed for the Heisman because that was like everyone's outraged for like that week. And now we're back to like other shit, outraging people. You know how the world works.
Right.
But he's going to break the record and potentially in a game where they can lose by 20. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean when I'm saying like the record versus the legacy. Mm-hmm. It could be his last game, and I get it. But if he would have done it in a win in their last regular season game, it would have looked better than him doing it.
With a conference title game, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm picking them to lose. But if he gets, 140 yards, like it'll look great that he ran that well against Penn State. But I don't think people are going to go into next season wondering like who could break Ashton Denty's record. It's still going to be a conversation of like whose season was more impressive. You know how we compare shit now.
Right.
It'll be Barry Sanders versus Genty. So he won't even like stand alone as the owner, of the record.
Yeah, so then we go over to ATL down in the compressor. You got the Texas Longhorns favored by 13, is it? Yeah, favored by 13, over under 51.5 against the Arizona State Sun Devils. So I like this game. I'm so intrigued about this game because I truly don't know what to expect. Texas could come out here and win 56-7. Texas could come out here and win 24-21. Arizona State could win 48-41. The variance of this game to me is massive. Even though I know 91% or whatever it is going to pick Texas to win this game. Now, Texas, number one rushing team in the nation. Arizona State was number one rushing defense in the Big 12, but the problem is that the Big 12 doesn't have those big nasties the way that the SEC does and the way that Texas does.
Texas has like criminal offensive linemen. Like they assault people.
Yes, they do.
Number 76 is probably one of my favorite. Like he did something in the end zone. Like he just was tossing this defensive tackle around. I believe it was from like Michigan. It was like, this dude is reckless. Like this type of dude you want in a bar fight. You and him versus the bar. And you're like, yeah. I think his name's Connor. Like, come on, be Connor. No problem.
You ready for my cliche?
Let's hear it.
So Texas, as the better team, cannot let Arizona State hang around. because Arizona State is 6-1 in one-score games this year, which leads the nation for most wins in one-score games. So they're not going to panic late. It's not going to be one of those things where you're playing against big, mighty Texas and you're not supposed to be here and the game is going to get too big for you. This is what Arizona State does.
And Coach Dillingham is going to have them prepared too.
That's what I was going to say. On top of that, he's had a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
He's had a couple of weeks to dial something up. So what we could see, what I think we're going to see, is I think we're going to see Arizona State have success with the scripted plays. And then they might get a little lost once the script runs out. So Texas, obviously, like I said, the key is to stop the run. For example, Texas has lost 2 games this year. Both of those games were to Georgia. In the first game against Georgia, they ran 28 times for 31 yards. That's 1.1 yard per carry, y'all. In the SEC championship game, 27 carries for 29 yards. That's 1.1 yard per carry, y'all. So Arizona State has to stop the run. Last week against Clemson, Texas ran wild. Jaden Blue ran for 146. Quintrevion Wisner ran for 110. So Arizona State, the lowest scoring output that they've had this year is 24 points. Texas, the most they allowed was the Georgia game where they gave up 30. Arizona State's best receiver, Tyson, he's still out. They got a freshman quarterback who's already gave bulletin board material because he wants to show that he's the best quarterback in this game.
Unnecessary. And that's what
unnecessarily.
He didn't unnecessary. Like you didn't need to say that. That's irrelevant. And when the best quarterback is irrelevant in this game because Texas is better everywhere else.
Right. And I hate to do the thing where I'm going to punish you for who you lost to. But they lost to Texas Tech and Cincinnati. Granted, one of those games, Sam Leavitt, the aforementioned quarterback, didn't play. But this is where playing teams from other conferences gets fun. Because who else has Texas played this year that has this type of offensive potential? Georgia put up 30, but they just smacked Texas around and sat on the ball. You know what I mean? Clemson put up some points last week, 24, and they could move up and down the field, but I don't know if Texas has played a team yet that has house money because when I look at Clemson, just off of the name Clemson, Dabo is your coach, you don't feel inferior to Texas. You feel like you can beat Texas. Arizona State is literally playing with house money. They're a 13-point underdog. They're on the other side of the country down in Atlanta.
Yeah, but the thing that as far as like the matchup with Georgia and the 30 points, it's because Georgia can control the line of scrimmage against any
Right.
team in America.
Right.
Like that's they on either side of the ball. Like that's their advantage. Most of these teams that are Power Five conference schools, when they match up with, well, now Texas being an SEC school, we talked about Boise State being an 11-point underdog. It's because when it breaks down, the trenches is where you lose. And I brought this up before. Dion, when he was talking about Jackson State and how teams accept, $3, $4, $5, $8 million to come play your Alabamas, to play your Tennessees and stuff like that. He was like, yeah. He was like, my skill position guys are on point. He was like, I'm not taking my guys up there to get beat in the trenches. Like that's where they have big boys in the trenches at Nebraska and at Wyoming. Like, some of these bigger Midwestern schools. Like they tend to be bigger in the trenches than these smaller Division I or HBCU schools. So when you look at Georgia, Texas, Bama, Clemson, like these other power schools, these southern states and stuff like that, they tend to have like the bigs up front. Arizona State, I don't think they're gonna have enough mass up front. And then you have the freshman. He's gonna make an early mistake. They're gonna if I'm Texas, I'm blitzing them the entire first drive. I'm going zero coverage and I'm blitzing them the entire first drive. And if that rattles them, I'm like, granted, you can't go zero coverage every play. That would be crazy. But I guarantee you he has never seen a team line up and say, we're going man to man on the outside, and I'm sending the house at you every play.
Yeah, and oh, by the way, Texas has the Thorpe Award back there too. So,
that's what I mean. Is like I think that's where if I'm Texas, I'm not coming out passive. I'm coming out extremely aggressive on defense by just impacting the line of scrimmage the best way I can with extra bodies. I remember like the game they played against Rice last year when they rotated the entire defensive line because it was very hot. Rice is just sitting in the sun cooking, and they're just bringing in fresh bodies, full defensive linemen. I'm doing that the whole all their early possessions. I'm getting up early, 17-0, 21-0. Very similar how they jumped on Michigan. I'm just doing that, and then that's going to throw some doubt in some of the players. Like, you know what, man, I didn't want to play
so give me so give me Texas to cover, so Kirk Herbstreit can still be upset. Give me the over. I'm taking Texas 41-20. And then
I like that. 38-14. Somewhere in that range, 41-4. I think it's going to be a blowout because, like I said, just the young quarterback's going to make mistakes just because they do, and then Texas, I think, is going to force them into other mistakes. Shout out to Cam Scatterbill. I think he's going to run hard, but there's only so much you're going to do when there's 9 people in the box.
Right. Yeah, no, that's 100%. And then, of course, what I'm saying, as Debo is screaming in my ear, this is the rematch, punk. Out in Pasadena, the Ohio State Buckeyes get a chance to avenge one of their losses this season. They come into the game a 2.5-point favorite over the only undefeated team in FBS football with an over-under of 55.5. So go on and give me the over right off top. Yeah. The first time they played, we previewed the game, and I picked Oregon to beat Ohio State. I had that pick preseason. When I actually watched the game, Ohio State was the better team. Oregon just won. Ohio State went away from what they do. They don't throw it to Jeremiah Smith enough.
Yeah, literally. My first 15 plays, he's getting 6. He's the first on 6 to 7 of those passes.
Where Ohio State lost that game, I know everybody's going to talk about Will Howard not sliding in time. I know people are going to talk about the offensive pass interference. I know people are going to talk about Dan Lanning calling the timeout. Where Ohio State lost that game was they allowed Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart to go 24 catches for 149. That's where they lost the game, because Denzel Burke was just out there. I don't know what he was doing, but he wasn't playing any defense. So when I look at this, I don't know if the rest was beneficial to Oregon. And I know, like, you always want the rest. But when I look at it, Ohio State, regardless of what they did to Tennessee, that was a physical game. Oregon's last game against Penn State seems like it was in 2024, meaning, hey, this game is on New Year's Day 2025. So that game was some time ago too. So when I look at these two teams, Dan Lanning has a lot of Sirianni in him. He goes for these fourth downs. The 3rd and 1, he's going to do some kind of trick play, sweep wide receiver pass. This ain't the time for that. You know what I mean? And that was his first big win, was that Ohio State game. Now, I think Ohio State is just simply on a mission right now. So, to my question that I was going to ask you, that I said I was going to save for you, it's that time, Mr. Logical. Is the winner of this game the national champion?
We got 8 teams left, right?
We do.
These are our final 8 teams.
Yep, we got Notre Dame and Georgia as the last game to preview.
Haven't seen a game. Georgia, but no Carson Beck. That's gonna be tough. I like what Notre Dame is doing, but we'll get to them. If Texas can kind of, I want to say right the ship, but just kind of put up the points we think they're going to put up against Arizona State.
Viewers can, because Texas has a red zone problem too. That's the other thing.
Yeah, if they can go out there and make, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no because I saw Ohio State play Michigan at home a few weeks ago. It wasn't like the September game against Boise State and Oregon, where it's like that was a long time ago, and it's like, hey, you barely escaped Boise State. I watched them lose to some quarterback at Michigan. Like he wasn't even like making like big throws. They were just like, you're getting muscled.
I want to say they only threw for 62 yards.
I watched Ryan Day, like when you can't call back-to-back timeouts in football. You can't call a timeout, and then before the other team runs a play or calls a timeout, you call a timeout. Like you can't call back-to-back timeouts. He called the timeout and then was ready to call another one like right after that. And I think the ref either ignored him or just didn't see him. Luckily, the play, got snapped or whatever, and it is what it is. But in that pressure moment, I was watching him calculate stuff, but he wasn't getting any answers. You can see it when these coaches just like, yo, what are y'all doing? Like I'm calling the plays and you guys aren't executing. It looked like Eberflus when the clock was running out.
Mike Brown.
Yeah, it's like you just kind of he's like he was staring off like, hey, I know someone's telling him what to do, but I don't know what's going on. And I think that pressure did that. I think Oregon can apply that same kind of pressure to Ohio State. And even if Ohio State gets through, I think Texas on a run, Penn State finally basically like kind of skirting around all their Achilles heels that they had in previous years.
Well, and we brought it up, right? Like, starting out with SMU and Boise as your path.
Yeah, and you're just kind of like skirting around your regular season year. Then you had granted you had to play the Big Ten championship, but you put up 37 points. You lost by 8 to an undefeated team. So it's like, okay, I think we have something here. And I believe that just all the years that Frank was kind of put in Penn State, I think I give him a shot. Because, like I said, we're looking at, you just asked me, is Ohio State, Oregon the de facto national championship? Meanwhile, Penn State's going to be the first team in the semifinals. But like you didn't even ask me, can Penn State win it all? Even though we both picked them to be in the semifinals.
I don't think they can.
But if you get Oregon again, like how confident are you? Now you're a confident team if you match with Oregon again.
Well,
and like how confident are we in Georgia?
Well, to put a bow on this, we're reversed, I guess, because the first time I picked Oregon and you picked Ohio State. This time I'm taking Ohio State. I think that Michigan game, the way they came out against Tennessee, I think they may be a little galvanized. Their manhood got challenged. They're on a mission now. This is the revenge tour.
But you know how Anthony Joshua, right? We talked about him to make a box reference. He fought Francis Ngannou, and we're like, yo, we gotta knock him out quick because everyone felt like Tyson Fury lost to Ngannou.
He did.
So he takes care of Francis Ngannou quick. And it's like, oh, this dude that came out of nowhere to beat Tyson Fury and you just beat him. And then he loses his next fight to another British heavyweight. Like got knocked down like the 5th round. I think Ohio State's that. They lost that game to Michigan. They sat around the conversation about their coach getting fired and everything else going on. And we kind of saw like their quarterback, was equally as shell-shocked in the big moment with Michigan. I think this is his first game against Michigan. So I think he felt the pressure. Mm-hmm. You get a layup in Tennessee. I know SEC fans don't want to hear it as a layup, but it's like you got a young quarterback probably playing. SEC is hostile environment, but it's also very comfortable. It's very close to where you are. I know Ohio and Tennessee aren't that far apart, but as far as like playing a game in Alabama when you're at Tennessee,
and then the weather,
and then playing the game against Ohio State when you're Tennessee, like they touch. Like Tennessee is south of Ohio, and Alabama is south of Tennessee, but it's a different mindset. It's like you're here. That game was tougher, and I think the environment didn't lend to it. It definitely wasn't familiar. It wasn't like you roll up to a game in the South and it's half the Tennessee fans are tailgating, and it's like the familiar smells, the barbecue, the energy, and everything else. You get to Ohio State, it was probably a way different vibe. And Ohio State, I think they were fortunate to get a team that wasn't as tough as the conference that the team came from. And I think they might be a little overconfident. Their behavior when Tennessee was walked to the locker room, it's like, yo, dog, you just lost to Michigan. Y'all need to tighten up. Like, don't come out here like we didn't see your lawmakers trying to ban and make it a felony to plant a piece of
plastic. You just got bitch smacked, and now you Big Dick Billy, huh?
Now you Big Dick Willie out here all in these streets. Like, yo, dog, didn't your stitches just come out? Because we just saw you get your ass kicked. Oh, nah, that was a different time. Like, well, this is a different opponent.
Yeah. Well, I also think that, like I said, they played Oregon at Autzen, came down to the very last play. They lost literally by a single point. They got the motivation to beat Oregon, so I'm taking them to do it. Then you got the Sugar Bowl down in Louisiana where I just came from. You know what I'm saying? You got the Georgia Bulldogs against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. You ready for this one?
Yep.
You had Notre Dame favored by 1.5 when it opened. Now Georgia's favored by 1. With the over-under sitting at 45.5.
What happened? What happened to the roster?
The only thing that happened was Carson Beck is wincing, and he's not playing. So, Mr. Logical, they did lose their sack leader. They did lose Riley Mills to go along with, they were already missing Benjamin Morrison. So, now it's up to Xavier Watts to save the day like he did against Indiana, set the tone early. But Mr. Logical, point blank, can Georgia win this game?
I don't know. Stetson Bennett was the quarterback for Georgia for a couple of years, and they won a couple of national titles. So Correct. It's like, I don't know if you need like this top tier potential high draft pick quarterback to win as a Georgia Bulldog. I think they have, if I'm guessing, I think the split's probably like 53-47 as far as like the picks. I just think Notre Dame is playing a little different. And if they can, I know Riley Leonard's not a great runner. He's a lot like, I think his passing and running is akin like Jalen Milroe, but I think Jalen Milroe is like a better passer than him.
A better athlete, yeah.
Better athlete. But, look, as long as if you can hit the hole when it's there and you run a 4.7 versus a 4.4, like as long as you can get there and get down and not get hit by one of these strong ass safeties that Georgia seems to find everywhere.
Malachi Stark, he's talking about you.
Yeah, so it's like, I'm going to say because Notre Dame's whole, I'm going to give them the edge just because their signal caller has been their running back. They have been like the temperament of the team all year long. So I'm going to give them the edge. Just continuity, I'm going to give them the edge.
I'm going to give Notre Dame the edge too because usually the thing that Kirby Smart has over his peers, if you will, is his defensive game plans. He's had extra time now, with the bye week to come up with a game plan. So I expect Georgia to come out like balls to the wall, if you will. Problem is you got another defensive coach on the other sideline. Problem is you got Al Golden as the defensive coordinator for Notre Dame. So this isn't your typical Notre Dame team that SEC teams are used to running over. The same way that we always talk about, or you always talk about, Georgia and their, 6'5", 330-pound linemen. Notre Dame is going to be able to go toe-to-toe with that. You know what I mean? Now, the problem that I think Notre Dame will have is that I still don't know if, to your point about Riley Leonard, I don't know if they have the wide receivers to put the pressure on Georgia's defense for Jeremiah Love, my guy, to just run through these holes like he was against Indiana. On the flip side, Georgia wasn't running the ball effectively with Carson Beck. So now I'm supposed to think that they're going to suddenly run the ball effectively without him. I don't care if that's Travis Etienne's little brother or not. You know what I'm saying? It hasn't mattered all season. And I don't think it matters now. So I'm going with Notre Dame against my will. Like I just threw up a little bit in my mouth. But I'm going with Notre Dame, and I'm talking about 13-9. And, to set up a Penn State Notre Dame match for the ages in the next round. Give me the Irish.
So you got Penn State, Notre Dame, and Texas,
and
Ohio State, and I got Texas and Oregon.
Yep. So there you have it.
I like Notre Dame there too. 13-9 might. I like Notre Dame. Like I said, just continuity. Just figure like
I'm this close. I was this close to picking Georgia. That close.
I just can't see a team that played up and down all year in Georgia, even though they won 10 games with their guy who's projected to be probably like the 5th or 6th quarterback taken, somewhere between 4 and 6, depends on whose mock draft you look at.
Right.
If they were up and down with him all year long and he's a returning guy, I just don't see the guy you put in place a few weeks ago.
Especially against a team like Notre Dame. If you were playing Arizona State, play ball. You know what I mean?
If you're playing Boise State,
Boise, play ball.
Yeah.
But not this time, not against this team. Notre Dame's just clicking right now. So finally, while we're talking about college football, we might as well talk about it, Mr. Logical. We've been talking about record breaking all night. So on Saturday, we had a guy at the University of Miami break the NCAA all-time career touchdown record. And then he didn't play anymore. So before we get to that part of it, we had our conversation about bowl games the other day. And
Correct.
If players should play, if they should sit out, what are they worth, so on and so forth. I think that speaking personally, I'm not Cam Ward, obviously. I can only dream to be as talented as Cam Ward is. I think it would be hard for me as I'm sitting on the bench and my team is going back and forth in this game and the crowd is screaming, "We want Cam." I think it would be hard for me to just sit out, to not play anymore. Not because of that per se, but for the fact that it was a 42-41 game. And you know what I mean? Like, I just don't know, like, if I could have sat out. Now, granted, he breaks his collarbone or something. You know, hindsight 2020, you're singing a different tune.
Yeah, who's paying that money? Keep in mind, you get drafted in the first round as a quarterback. I think you're eligible for an extension after your third season. That extension would be, so he goes 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28. That extension is probably going to be 5 years, $305 million by that point, 310. So, do I play 30 more minutes at the Pop-Tart Bowl and then potentially getting, because your first round deal, I think it's a smooth 100. If I had to guess, I know they capped it, but I think it's a solid deal. Like, you know, if you want to pull it up real quick.
Yeah.
So you played, you broke the record. He didn't opt out of the game. I get it, but if I go in and I get injured, we talked about Jake Butt, we talked about Jalen Smith. It's like, yeah, he has an insurance policy. He probably has a $5 to $10 million insurance policy. Maybe
and Deion had that for Travis and Shedeur.
Yeah, Deion had the same thing, but that $10 million.
Willis McGahee.
The insurance that you really need is if I have a first round grade before this bowl starts and I get injured, I keep my first round grade. Like if that guarantee's in there, which is not, which no team would even agree to.
Yeah, and Carson Beck didn't declare it, so we'll see what happens with him now. But according to Sport Track, the top 5 picks in the draft can expect to make at least $30 million. But their example is the second overall pick should expect somewhere near $32.3 million
guaranteed.
And then the fifth. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the 5th round. The fifth pick. The second pick, 36.8.
Okay, so he has a $10 million insurance policy. He gets injured, doesn't get drafted. He cashes in his $10 million. That's still $10 million. I'm not doubting that. But if I stand here for 30 minutes and I insure myself at least a $30 million guarantee with the opportunity to probably keep my job for a couple of years, because we talked about it, like you can't really give up on your first round draft pick quarterback as quickly. The Falcons got rid of Ritter. He was a 3rd round pick, didn't cost him any money. Trevor Lawrence got $250 million. They didn't play that much different. Yeah, Herbert got 250, 260. So it's like, I'd rather be there. And if I'm Cam Ward, listen, I'm a transfer. I didn't get recruited by this coach out of junior high.
Transfer.
we have like this 4 or 5 year relationship, and I'm out here laying on the line for him. It's like, I came here for a nice check and potentially win the Heisman. I was close. I had a great year. It was fun. I showed everybody that, because he was working out with Shedeur in the summer. There's a lot of video clips of them talking shit to each other. He's like, so I came out here. I had my team in position to go to college football playoff. It didn't happen. We had this bowl game. I did my part. Now it's time for me to go train on the beach in San Diego with Jordan Palmer or George Whitfield, one of these quarterback gurus, and get ready for the draft.
You know where Cam Ward started college at?
Somewhere in your hood, right? In San Antonio?
Yeah, about 20 minutes that way. You know, the University of the Incarnate Word, before he found his way up in the Palouse. I only said that so I could say the Palouse. Yeah. But
So you
You
got a
know,
guy that went from high school to small school in Texas, Washington, and down to Miami, and you mad at him because he ain't try to go win the Pop Tart Bowl. Pop
right.
Tarts out there ripping off plastic like strippers. Like, come on,
And you know,
I'm
and
not
that's the
fly.
thing about it is that,
Get your
you
money,
know,
player.
all this stuff is control. Like people are just mad that players have a voice now. Players have the ability to state their terms, you know, and say what they will and won't do. I mean, Malik Neighbors did the same thing last year in their bowl, in LSU's bowl game, so that he could become the all-time LSU receiving leader. Nobody batted an eye. They probably didn't notice, but since it's a quarterback, it's highlighted. You
Yeah,
know, like
the
that's all it
control
is.
piece is probably the biggest thing. Like I was masquerading on social media as our podcast, and I sent you the clip. They were talking about it was two guys. They have a podcast. I want to give them credit for that, but I forgot the name. And they were talking about how this quarterback. He's like, I heard he's getting 4 million to play, and I'm like, well, we just talked about the money for a first round draft pick. The first round draft pick is guaranteed
At least 30.
30, at least 30 million. If I'm a transfer and I'm a 6 foot tall quarterback, but I'm great for college because I'm a playmaker. Colleges don't mind if you run around a lot and make plays because they know I'm not giving you a 5 year deal. Like the Ravens are worried about Lamar because they were trying to give him a deal to keep him being a Raven for a long time, and it was going to be $250 million.
Right.
So college is like, listen, you go out there and make plays, we'll see what happens. You know,
Right.
stay injured, get out of bounds, slide, everything else. But it's like if you're a running quarterback and we need you, and we have $1.5 million available in NIL, we're going to pay you. So the podcast and a lot of people who talk about NIL, they make it seem as if it's the players who are making college football worse. I'm like, listen, and this is what I said on this podcast. The comment I put: if the $4 million wasn't available from Tulane, they would not be able to get the guy from Duke to come there. Someone at
Other way
Tulane,
around.
from Tulane
From
to Duke,
Tulane to Duke.
Tulane
Yeah.
to, yeah. So if the money is not available from the people who handle the money at the receiving university, then the player can't go there. So being mad at the player for going to a school for 1 year for $4 million is asinine because the financial people who probably aren't his age, who are probably well established, money making adults, money management adults, they understand that $4 million just sold us $100 million in game tickets and hot dogs.
Speaking of which, how would you like to be Malik Murphy? Start out at Texas, and then you're like, oh, Quinn came back. Arch is next. I went to Duke. We went 9-3, and somehow I ended up at Oregon State.
Listen, I think if they cut the checks and the school parties hard enough, none of that bothers them.
I guess so. But speaking of records, Mr. Logical, what does the ACC's 1-9 bowl record mean?
It's the TCU effect. It's gonna give the college football committee leverage to say, so what happened last year when the ACC played in their bowl games, and we understand that everyone doesn't get that same grading rubric. Like certain conferences have to do certain things. They got to
Mhm.
win by a certain amount. Certain coaches have to look more impressive in order to keep their social cachet. ACC was in a position where they had to like win more games to ensure that they didn't get jammed up next year. So if it comes down to it, Clemson SMU scenario this year, if it happens again next year where it's a 10-3 conference winner and a 10-2 loser of the conference
You
championship
ain't getting
game,
in.
your 9-3 SEC school getting in, or your 10-2 SEC school that was waiting in the wings, they're gonna leapfrog you.
Yeah.
It's you. I wouldn't say you need this to happen, but Arizona State beats Texas. Notre Dame beats Georgia. It might save the ACC from having to essentially suffer and be punished next year for the results of this year because
no SEC team even made it to the semi.
Someone has to say that out loud. They have to say that quiet part out loud. Tennessee got destroyed. Arizona State beat Texas, and Georgia got destroyed by Notre Dame. It has to be something like that because for some reason they use like these past results that have nothing to do with the people who were operating going forward, especially in college sports. It's a whole different batch of people most of the time.
Right. And the ACC's only win in the bowl game is Syracuse beating Wazoo from the Palouse. But in that game, of course, Washington State's quarterback left for Oklahoma. Their head coach left for Wake Forest, and they still put up 35 on Syracuse.
Yeah.
But then also, the ACC also sports bowl losses to East Carolina, Toledo, and UConn. So that doesn't help either. So and that's the thing, Residente. That's the thing that I've been saying from day one is that, as a wise man once told me, don't piss in my pocket and tell me it's raining, because there's no way that you're watching these games and seeing these results and you're going, I'm going to move this team up or I'm going to leave this team where they are. Because if you're re-ranking every week, you have new data points. So you're looking at the full schedule from top to bottom. You're not going, this is what happened this week. You have to look at, okay, so you beat Georgia. I'm talking about Alabama. So you beat Georgia. You lost to Vanderbilt. Hey, you know what? You got a little streak going. Oh, what happened there?
Bad loss to Oklahoma. Nah, don't worry about it.
You got to fall to the back of the line. Like losing to Tennessee ain't bad, but you lost to two teams that went 6-6, including one that just lost to Navy in the bowl game. So, sorry, you're not re-ranking every week, because if you were, Alabama wouldn't have been as close to the playoff as they were.
Correct. And that's the thing. It's sometimes is you don't have to say, like, I know we always clamor to hear the quiet part out loud. We don't need that. We just need the results. Just give me the results. I don't want to know how to talk.
Well, tomorrow,
because you can't be honest. Because like before the ACC championship game, so that week before the championship games, the committee had like Manuel Nord or something like that, or Nord Manuel, I forget his name. He said pretty much there was no changes that were going to happen.
Right.
It was set.
Like they were set in their spots.
Set in their spots. So to me, that made me think, okay, there's going to be an odd man out in the playoffs. So when SMU lost, I looked at it like, well, they had 2 losses by a total of 6 points. I know they didn't play the greatest schedule, but they had 2 losses by 6 points, and the game was either tied or they had the lead or something like that. It was tied, or it was like they were down by 3 with like 2 minutes left in the game. It was like they weren't getting blown out and had to clamor back every single time. They were like, okay, boom. Last 2 minutes of the game, they lost a kick. So when they didn't put Alabama in, I was like, oh, I wonder why. Then he did the interview, and he said, we watched the game and we saw how SMU competed and how they battled, and that's why we decided that they deserved an opportunity to be in the playoff. So it is a week-to-week analysis, which makes more sense. You don't have to say we re-rank week-to-week. We can say we make a week-to-week analysis. And even with a loss, you can say, well, I think they show a competitive spirit. Like, for instance, if they wanted to drop Penn State out because they gave up 45 points to Oregon, like, you know what, we don't think that they can survive. We want to put in an SEC school. They could have done it if they wanted to, but they looked at it like, you know what? They were already in at 11-1. Ohio State lost the week before. We're going to keep them in. So we can't just move Penn State out because they had to play a Big Ten championship game because Ohio State lost their rival. You know what I mean?
To shoot him a little bill. I think that what he was getting at was more or less that Miami and Ole Miss weren't in South Carolina weren't going to jump Alabama. Right. So that didn't preclude if SMU had lost bad enough, I guess. If Clemson had beat SMU 31-3, that doesn't preclude Alabama from jumping SMU. Just those other teams weren't going to jump in front of Alabama.
And
I think that's what he was getting at.
But that's the thing. I don't know if he even needed to mention that because it kind of.
Well, they asked him the question, though. They asked him the question. They said, can a team that's outside the top 12
then lie? Then lie. Because what happened then, to me, it took away the
suspense.
The suspense of the. Because
who's going to get in? Yeah,
I was thinking
you got all these shows every week.
You can lose. You lose your championship game, you could be out.
Hey, but we knew that already because TCU lost their conference title game that year.
But TCU once again is like the poster child for this.
But TCU beat Michigan though, so like we leave that part out because they lost 65-7 in the national title game. But they won a playoff game before that against a big school. So, I mean, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, we don't always tell the whole story. But that's what Sports Reports is Ordered is here for. And we will see you all on Friday, because it's time for some more picks, NFL Week 18, where we're going to get every pick wrong because we don't know who playing in the damn games. You know what I'm saying? But we're going to do it anyway. We're going to review these playoff games that we're talking about right now. So we'll have the semifinal matchups, so we can talk about those a little bit. We'll talk about, was Mike Brown really trying to bench DeMar DeRozan? And why was that the correct answer? Because it was. But anyway, we'll get into that as well on Friday because the Kings unjustifiably fired him. But whatever. He is the even kill, Mr. Logical, and all he asks of you is that you don't bring feelings to a fact fight. And then, of course, I am 2-5, the Falcon Killer. The Falcon Killer. We love you. Peace. Like, review, subscribe, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things. Peace.